Welcome to the Organize Anything podcast with Colette Robichaud.
Hello and welcome to The Art of Saying No, ADHD-Friendly Strategies for Avoiding Overcommitment. There's quite an impact with overcommitment, and I don't think we always think about it as much. We know it directly affects our health with increased stress and anxiety. We lessen our productivity, and we're prone to more emotional exhaustion and burnout. And we're often missing other opportunities for self-care because we're saying yes to too many other people and overcommitting to things that maybe we shouldn't be. So when we have all this overcommitment, we often feel overwhelmed. And this can come from a real desire to please others. And I find this a lot. I've been coaching people, as I said, for 25 years. And a lot of people really, come from a good place when they want to say yes. They want to be a good person. They want to say yes and volunteer. They want to see their friends. It's a big buffet table out there, and we really want to kind of nibble from all places. But, that can really become an issue for us. And some people have that real FOMO, fear of missing out. There's so many things happening. And, the other thing is we can underestimate when we say yes to something, really the time and energy that can really use from us. So with an ADHD brain, impulsivity is something that happens. And so in the moment, we can often just say yes. And often with the ADHD brain, it's either now or never. So we're very used to being, impulsive and saying yes. And also we can be sold an idea because if someone's making it really exciting for us, we can be sold and say yes. So without us creating boundaries, and that's something I really want you to think about tonight, what are those boundaries? What are your criteria? This will elevate your idea of thinking about what is a good reason to say yes. And as I've said before in many of my sessions, that I'm a real believer in making tiny baby step changes. We know that small changes made consistently over a period of time will stick and stay. But when we take on a lot of changes, they really become inconsistent because they're not manageable. And one of my favorite books that I always recommend is James Clear, Atomic Habits. And he talks a lot about this. He says, focus on making one small manageable change at a time. If you think about trying to change your diet, and which is one of those things a lot of people fail, think about all the little micro changes that you're making. You're eating more vegetables, you're cooking more, you have to grocery shop differently. Maybe you're eating things you've never had before that you have to look up recipes. So there's so many variables in the mix. So the more you can keep it to small and focused, the better off you'll be. So hopefully there'll be lots of information for you to reflect on, but when you are thinking about things in the end, try and stick to making some small changes and adding some other ones in as you go along. So the problem with indecision is that it does lead to some anxiety and stress because of the over commitment. So if you're really indecisive about, do I do it, don't I do it, that really can be a problem for you. ADHD brains struggle more with decisions because of the fear of making a wrong choice and, or the impulsivity of just making that yes decision just because it seems like the right thing to do at the time. That pressure to respond quickly really doesn't work well most of the time, because saying yes to things you don't want to say yes to has really long-lasting effects. So if we want to start to take care of that situation, we want to really pause and reflect. So pausing to take a moment before responding is something that is like a muscle that we'll have to build. I know for me in the past, I was very quick and decisive about wanting to say yes to a lot of things. And, over the years, I added in a lot of these tactics to help me not be overcommitted. I'm a big volunteer person. And once you are someone that says yes to a lot of things, people know that and they search you out and expect you to say yes. So work on that pause. And you can do that by saying, let me check my schedule and get back to you. So you're asking them to let you not make a decision in the moment. You might also want to ask them for more information, but make sure when you tell them you're going to get back to them, that you are indeed telling them when you'll get back to them, and you're noting that by putting in your schedules. But the big picture, if we want to go really big picture, we want to see not only if this fits in your schedule, which is a go-to place for a lot of people, like, oh, what are you doing Thursday? You might look in your schedule because that's where where you're led to. Or instead of, saying, oh, what's in mind, you say, oh, I'm free on Thursday. You want to first say, what do you have in mind? So be careful you don't say, oh, I'm free, before you even consider whether you want to do it. So the other consideration is really big picture. So your schedule is kind of down the tube, but does it fit in your personal and professional goals? Will this make both your personal life and professional life better? You can create your own criteria to figure out whether saying yes will work for you or against you. So we want to pause and ask for more details. So, get the full scope of what's going on. Ask them to tell you more, send you something in an email while you consider it. But think yourself, what kind of time is this going to take? What sort of effort? And what are the deadlines? How do those deadlines affect things that you're already doing? And, being very explicit about the time is a question that you often have to ask. Is this a 2-hour job? Is this a 10-hour? What are the commitments in meetings? What are the expectations? In volunteering, I've seen this over the years, tons of people getting burnt out because there wasn't a full scope of work of what that looked like. I'm not seeing that as much anymore because people know that they need to, on both sides, know that it's more important to have a very transparent idea of what the scope of work is, whether it's volunteer or real work. And, evaluate your capacity. So what's happening at the same time? What's coming up? Oh my goodness, it's the fall. I'm always more tired in the fall. Or, it's the winter and I have to make a in-person meeting once a week. Is that something that you want to be committed to if you're don't like to drive? So take in your personal preferences, think about what's going on seasonality wise, and visualize that outcome. Make a mental picture of what it looks like when you take on that task. How does that fit into your day? Is this a commitment that you have to do every day? Does it have to fit into your day in that way? Is it a commitment that you're going to have to go after work? So because you've said yes to your friend that you will go to the gym with her every day after work. So how does that fit in your day? What are the other things you have to do? That means instead of just packing your lunch, you also have to have a gym bag packed as well. So evaluate, is this worth it to you in this way? But know also, if someone is asking you something, it's not just a yes or no. You can have a counter offer as well. You can be creative in if it's something that appeals to you, and you can say, well, this is appealing to me, but that would not work with those sort of commitments. So I'm just hearing someone in the background. I'm wondering if they could mute, if they're not. Great. So when someone asks you something, make sure that you set a deadline for yourself and let the other person know that you'll be getting back to them at a specific time. You want to do your reflection, but don't make it go too long. A lot of times we know with making decisions, we kind of know what we want in a very brief period of time. I don't mean immediately, but once we think about it a little bit. And, another thing is, if you have the opportunity, if someone's asking you in person, it does make it easier for people to get back to someone in writing. This eyeball to eyeball is a difficult scenario for a lot of people to say no. But if you're responding in writing in an email or a text, you can go to a script. I think it's really important that people can have scripts that they can use. I appreciate the offer, but I'm unable to commit. Oh, I always start with thanks so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate it. And then there's the but. Know that you don't have to story tell the whole reason why that it's a no. Sometimes a little more information is helpful to let people know about boundaries that you have in general so they don't come back to you. You don't want to say something like, oh, now is not a next time, maybe ask me next year. If you really don't want to do it, do not lead people on to be getting back to you at different times, just as a kind of as a rebuttal. Make sure you're giving accurate information. If it's not for you, say, thank you so much. That's not something I'd be interested in, but don't tell them to follow up with you at another time if you're not interested. And if you've made up your mind, and be careful not to change it unless you really have to. We really get measured by we want our words and our deeds to match. And for most of us professionally, we don't want to be known as that person that overpromises and underdelivers. And that's a really big reason why it's important to know how to say no and not to overcommit. Because I'm sure we've all been out there with people that say they're going to do a lot more than they have. I know I've sat on tons of boards that meet monthly, and the person's going to get back to you. They're back the next month and they still don't have things done. So, reputation is very important professionally and personally. So just make sure that, you've done your homework and that that urge to change your mind is something that you want to put off once you made that decision. And outside of having your scripts of practicing saying no, visualize yourself saying no. We want to make sure that it's okay to say no, that often people.
Good night, Sarah.
I think I'm hearing someone again. If you could mute your line, that would be great. Make sure that you get used to that idea of saying no, so you can do it by rehearsing, and you can visualize yourself. If you've had the conversation with someone and before you send off your email to say no, just visualize what that would be like. I want you to really get comfortable with building that muscle of saying no. So many of you have read Brené Brown's books, seen her on TED Talks and YouTube. She's a wonderful author with a great sense of humor and a lot of really good research and information. And she says that saying no can be the ultimate self-care, allowing us to set boundaries and prioritize what really matters. And isn't that about, what life is all about, that we are doing what really matters to us? And if we are people-pleasing, we are not doing what matters to us. We often get a buildup of resentment because we're saying yes to so many people. And over time, it just leads to a sense of a lack of self-worth. We're dissatisfied, and and certain people that we're saying yes to all the time, we even get this emotional detachment that crops up. And it's really a shame because another way of looking at it is that if we're saying yes all the time, that there's a lack of authenticity as well. And this pops up in our relationship. If one partner is always saying yes to the other, you don't know what that person really likes if it's in the beginning stages. And as that goes on, there's just some other unhealthy patterns that go with it. And over time, there just really, reduces that satisfaction in the relationship because it feels like one person is always saying yes. And we know that saying no is a sign of mutual respect, and it deepens the understanding of each other. And it really is a foundation to build and have healthy discussions. So, a lot of times early in the relationship, we're all eager to say, yes, I want to do this. Oh, yes, I'll go to that horror movie when you don't want to. And, I want you to just consider what those yeses mean over the long term. And I thought it was interesting when I was doing some research about that idea of inauthenticity, because I would not have thought of it that way. But, you're not showing yourself in a way that is true to yourself. And, that's not where we want to be in relationships. And of course, if we're living an inauthentic life by saying yes and people pleasing, that really is not a very happy life either.
If you're a busy professional looking for help with getting your work and home in order, connect with us on LinkedIn. linkedin.com/company/organize-anything.
So recognizing when to say no, we want to identify our personal limits. This is where we get our checklist of what's important to us. What is the time, the energy, and the resources? For some people, maybe, I just don't go out in the evenings because I'm too tired. If I'm not out by, 6 o'clock, it's too late, and I just can't do it. So you want to recognize if you're saying yes too often in the run of a week. You want to look at the timing, and you want to look at your resources. Where's the backup if you have no one at home to help you with other things, or what are those resources that allow you to say yes? And some of those red flags that come up when you're saying yes too much is that fatigue, resentment, and just overwhelm. And if we think of building our criteria of, certain things that we say yes to, certain times or family time, another key foundational piece with that is just trusting your gut. Like, you may think about it, that point between someone asking you and you're making that decision to email the next day. When you're visualizing saying no, you're also visualizing saying yes. What does that feel like? As you read through those materials of what it's like, all that timing. And we may still want to say yes, and it may not be a good decision, but these are all things that you can add into your repertoire of making that decision. So, we're happiest if we're doing things we truly want to do. And I know for me, I can get very excited about many projects. I also get very excited about helping other people. But we have to resist that urge. Again, build that muscle to at least delay, to pause, and give it some more time. If someone says they need an answer right away, I've often said, if you need an answer right now on this call, I'm going to have to say no. So feel free to have something like that in your collage of scripts that you might have. But again, we're always going to refer back to our personal and professional goals. Instead of just looking at our schedule, again, that person might say, hey, what are you doing on November 21st? Check your schedule. When someone tells you to do something and sort of starts it with a verb like, check your schedule, tell me if you're doing something, it's a directional thing that we go to do it. And our answer is, no, I'm free, a lot of time. And many people are much better than this than others. But these are little things to look for if you are one of those people that do struggle with saying no to people. So this is a quote from Ned Hollowell. He's a great ADHD specialist. I've seen him speak at conferences, and a couple of his early books are still very popular today, Driven to Distraction and Delivered from Distraction. He has several more books out there as well, some on just different approaches to for people that have ADHD brains. So what he says is the ability to say no is crucial for mental health and well-being, especially for individuals who struggle with impulsivity or overcommitment. So again, this is a gentleman who is a leader in ADHD and tactics and strategies, and he recognizes that for that sort of brain that we have, it's crucial for us to work that no muscle. I mentioned earlier using scripts to say no, and I'm a big believer in writing these out. So if you have to craft an email, you can go to your search in your documents and say scripts, and there you can see some things you said before. And often we're in conversation, we might say something and it feels very authentic and it worked, and we might want to capture that and use that again and add it to our script list. So you may have something in your list that says, I'm not able to take on this project right now because I don't have the time to give it my full attention. And, if this is something at work, you might say, hey, I think Dave, this might be a better job for Dave. But, one of the questions that comes up is, how can I say no to my boss when she's asking, or he or she is asking me to do something? So one thing that I say to that is, if it's someone saying, can you do this for me right away? You can say something like, currently right now I'm working on this, this, and this, and they all have deadlines this week. If you're wanting me to get this done this week, is there one of the other ones that I can move into the next week, or a couple of them? So, it's not simply a yes or no, but and you don't want to say, oh, I'm too busy. But if you say, you may not be aware, but I have some deliverables for this person as well. They're all kind of following this week. I have these for you. Is it possible for me to move one of those to another time? And not everything can be moved, but that is one way to sort of offer a bit of a negotiation, just to see how that might work. I usually lead most of the time, thanks for the invitation, but I'm unable to attend. And, sometimes if you want to let people that are close to you, or maybe people at work, know some of your boundaries, you could add some additional information. Know that it's not required, but some additional information would be, I never go out on Tuesday or Wednesday nights because that's usually, my date nights, or I've got, kids hockey or something like that. So you're giving them some boundaries, or, once I'm home, I'm not going to head back downtown for anything. I'm not someone to go out much in the evening. I don't like driving after dark in the winter. You can give a little bit that people understand some of those boundaries, but you don't have to give every detail of that. A simple thank you, I'm not able to attend. That was a very kind invitation. Different things for you to add in your document of scripts. Thanks for thinking of me. That's something else I always say, especially if they're asking for me to volunteer. People often say, oh, someone told me that you'd be really good at this, or someone told me to ask you. And it's like, oh, well, that's very, generous, those comments, or something like that. So you can lead with something like that. But, currently I'm unavailable for any new commitments. That project sounds interesting, get back to me in the new year, but don't say it unless you mean it. And, you can say something like, I'm really pressed for time over the coming months, and I'll have to pass on that. But again, when you're saying, I'm not available for new commitments, or I'll have to pass, it does imply that maybe there are other times that you can do that. But if it's not a fit, or if you have no more capacity to do certain things, or you don't want to go out, that's where, by you doing a little bit of explanation, it's actually sharing some boundaries. It's sort of like, oh, my partner says I never need to do another ounce of volunteering again. I've done it all in the last whatever, just, something. Don't over explain, but, if you're clarifying, it does help to share some of your boundaries. And you can, suggest some alternatives, and maybe offer to help in a more manageable way for you. You might have been on committees in the past, or worked on projects in the past, and you could say, hey, I'm, not able to sit on that committee anymore. There's no way I can make those Zoom meetings or the in-person meetings, but, what I think I could handle is, I could probably give you a couple hours, and over several weeks, and I could do some follow-up phone calls. So think about where you are in your life, what would work for you. If you want to do that, you do not have to suggest an alternative. But if it is a project that you might want to stay warm with, you might do that. Or if it's just something that you want to give in a little way, think about what that could look like. If you can't think of that, say, do you have anything that I could do for just an hour? Is there anything that I could be helpful with? I'm tied up, with the kids until 9 o'clock, but I could maybe manage doing something if you needed some documents reformatted, or you needed a website updated, or something like that. So think about how you could do that. So many people ask me about how to deal with guilt and that whole fear of missing out. So, what I say is, stop worrying about missing out on other things, and think about designing those things that you want to do for yourself. So figure out what you want to do. If we're leading our life with intention, and doing what we want to do, we can become stronger with saying no to other people. And self-care is not selfish. Self-care is the foundation. And, that's something for us to kind of keep going on this kind of slow jog or marathon of life. We need to be creating self-care routines that keep us for the long run. Often we have things that really set us up that they're not things that can be maintained. Even our work life, we all are doing more and more with less. And, many times it's questionable whether people can keep it up. People are getting sick, people have burnout. So those are things we want to talk about. So find joy in saying no. Just think about what your priorities are and make sure that you're living your life with intention. When we get to the other end of our life, we want to be happy that we've said yes to us and not to too many other people that we really don't want to say yes to. So a quote from Dr. Henry Cloud, who is a psychologist, says, "When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated." So there's a lot of resentment that can build up with people that are saying yes and saying yes. And one of the sides of that is that when you're saying yes to certain people, and I think that's a lot in relationships, they don't even understand that you don't want to say yes. We may be putting in the love bank account and making deposits in the bank account by saying yes, but that other person doesn't know that. They think you want to do that. They think you want to go see horror movies when you really truly rather see something else. So think about being authentic with what you want. And we don't want to reach the point that we feel mistreated by the very people that we love and they love us. And another mental health researcher, Christine Morgan, says setting boundaries is a way of caring for myself. It doesn't make me mean, selfish, or uncaring because I don't do things your way. I care about me too. Excuse me. So make sure that we are showing on a daily basis how much we care about ourselves. Something that's come up a lot in the coaching I've done with clients is this idea of wanting to be nice and being afraid to look like the mean person saying no. And, my thing is, why would you even want to appear to be nice? Is it really a good idea? So being nice all the time, as we said, can lead to, overcommitment, burnout, resentment. We're constantly putting our needs and priorities sacrificing those and putting others ahead of ours. That doesn't perform well for us in the long well. It diminishes our self to be our ways of being productive, creative, and even just feeling happy. And it allows others to set unrealistic expectations of us because, oh, well, you've always said yes in the past. I would not expect that. Or if you've said yes to doing things that you didn't like, then all of a sudden you're doing kind of a switcheroo and like, well, who are you? You always did this with me. And now, all of a sudden maybe you're cranky with that person or you're snapping back at that person when all the while you've been going along. So, know that true respect comes from setting boundaries, not people pleasing. The other thing to think about it when you are seen as nice, it's really at the expense of your own needs, but also there are some negative traits that accompany that desire to be nice. If asked about some negative traits that you could assign to someone that is a nice person, these could be that you are overly accommodating, you're submissive, you're indecisive, you're inauthentic, passive, self-sacrificing, insecure, weak-willed, or easily manipulated. I'm not saying that being nice means that you have all these negative traits, but if we were just coming up with some negative traits, these could be some of the things. And I find that this comes up more with females. I work with a lot of young females moving into management and work with them on executive presence and communication skills. And, this is where some people that are nice and always say yes, someone's on vacation, will you watch my files? Will you do this? Things kind of roll to that person. It's hard to get them into a management role when they're seen as being nice and they're too busy sometimes helping others out and taking the time to do that. And the reputation isn't seen as a leadership one. So again, I'm, kind of exaggerating what these negative traits could be, but just think about how that could happen in your situation. So some things we want to do is we want to pause and practice mindful decision making. We want to be upfront about our schedule and our limits to show that we have boundaries and want to protect our time. And, if we are saying yes, we want to make sure we are tracking those commitments. We want our words and our deeds to match. We don't want to be known as the person that overpromises and underdelivers. So, once you have set those boundaries and you are being authentic and clear about what works for you, people are less likely then to be asking you to do more than you can handle and that what you want to do. David Allen, who is a productivity expert and author, many of you have probably heard about his most famous book, Getting Things Done, a real great productivity book for a lot of people. It can be a little too exacting, I find, for an ADHD brain. It's not one I usually put on the reading list, but his quote is apt for this discussion. And he says, learning to say no is one of the most important steps in reducing stress and managing your time effectively. So as a productivity expert, he is recognizing how important that ability and that muscle to say no is. So think about how we can use technology to also reinforce those boundaries. An automatic email response outlining your availability. You could say, I'm out for the week and, I'll get back to you in the following week. Using your calendar to block off times when you want to work and putting them in as busy. Often, a lot of us are in offices where we share calendars and people can go in an even schedule, or, maybe your boss is looking and they're not seeing scheduled time. So they're like, oh, this person can really handle that project and I'm going to ask them if they can do it. But most of us have a lot of deep work that we have to do. It's not like popping off 3 or 4 tasks before lunch. So I like to ask my clients to book deep work sessions of an hour or 2. These could be, projects that you have to work on that you need some thought. You may need to go into a separate space that's really quiet to work. But by blocking those in, it can avoid people looking at your calendar and saying there's nothing in there. So a lot of people have a lot of things they're working on, but by calendaring it, people will actually see that and see that you're busy and that you are allotting time in your schedule. It's also a great way for you to kind of break things into little pieces and move them along if you are working on a longer term project. Okay, so we often, ADHD brains have a wealth of emotions, and you can go from very happy to very sad and very disappointed. So we want to watch that with saying yes. But in the end, learning to say no is a powerful tool for protecting your time, energy, and well-being, especially when navigating the challenges of ADHD. So remember, every no creates a space for a more meaningful yes.
Does this podcast make you want to learn more about finding your work-life balance? Follow the Facebook coaching page, facebook.com/ColetteCoaches. Thank you for listening to Organize Anything with Colette Robichaux.